We are quickly approaching week 14, which means it is time to kick into gear and make some league-winning decisions. With that being said, let's go ahead and look at some players with skyrocketing stock value that might be on their way to win you your league, and some players with falling stock that could be on their way to unfortunately lose you your league. Before we get into it, don't forget to drop a like. Also, hit that subscribe button. But our first player on this list is none other than Ramondre Stevenson. I hate to say it, but he's turned into exactly what we thought Alvin Kamara was going to be this season. We are looking at a running back that has completely taken over his backfield, even with Damien Harris healthy and playing. He has been averaging 6 targets a game this season and 8 since his bye week, on top of all of the rushing work he already gets. As you can see here, he's also averaging double-digit carries even with Damien Harris active. If the Patriots were to completely phase Damien Harris out of this offense, Ramondre Stevenson is looking at an insanely high ceiling and possibly a top 7 running back. We also cannot look over the fact that he does not score touchdowns. He has only had 5 touchdowns in the entire season, which means if Damien Harris completely gets faded out of the offense, he could see even more value than he already has. Another guy with a pretty interesting rise to fantasy fame, Christian Watson. For the past couple of weeks, we have been saying that this touchdown rate is not sustainable whatsoever, but it looks like the volume might be. Now, I'm not saying he needs to be started every single week or he'll be a top wide receiver, but the reality of it is he's had 8 touchdowns over the last 4 weeks on only 15 catches, which, if you do the math, essentially means he catches a touchdown on every second pass. This is just not sustainable. I think he is making a great push for fantasy relevancy, but he isn't a plug and forget flex option. Another guy absolutely tearing up fantasy leagues and skyrocketing his value is Garrett Wilson. I told you guys in the last start video that he was going to absolutely pop off, and he did just that. He saw 15 targets, 8 receptions, and 162 passing yards. It looks like Mike White is a fantasy savior for this Jets offense. Looking at their upcoming schedule, they have some pretty favorable matchup playing the Bills, Lions, and Jaguars, which are games that the Jets are going to have to draw up pass-heavy attacks. Now, obviously, we probably won't see Mike White throw over 50 passes a game again, but the volume is still there. Another guy with a huge stock rise this week, DeAndre Swift, which pains me to say because I just traded him away in the Walter Picks 32-person league, but he saw 14 rushing attempts and 6 targets out of the backfield. He also outsnapped Jamal Williams 16-14 and is making a sneaky trend up. It looks like he might finally be showing the light at the end of the tunnel for the fantasy managers that did draft him this year. But a duo of guys making their stock rise, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. It looks like we are finally cementing the fact that Geno Smith is a capable quarterback in this league and can support 2 wide receivers averaging over 70 yards a game. They have pretty good fantasy matchups coming up, the 49ers and the Chiefs. They're going to have to draw up a very pass-heavy attack to beat those 2 teams and stay in it. So considering this duo averages at least 1 touchdown a game with 70 yards on top of that, their stock is indeed rising a lot. But I do want to look at some players with stock absolutely plummeting right now. Number 1 on this list has to be Alvin Kamara. Now, we can cut him some slack because his last couple matchups have been absolutely brutal against the 49ers and the Bucks against the running game, but he's only averaged 8 fantasy points over the past 5 weeks, nowhere near the value that we drafted him at. If we go ahead and take a look at his game log, it looks like he strives in easy matchups and absolutely struggles in the hard ones. With that being said, he has a pretty easy fantasy football schedule, as you can see here. It might not be time to completely give up on him yet, but unfortunately, we definitely have to temper our expectations. Another guy whose stock has absolutely plummeted from a 5th round pick to only 50% rostered and borderline droppable, Brandon Cooks. Now, obviously, this offense is nowhere near good, but we came into the season drafting him like he was going to be what Deontay Johnson was last year. A clear wide receiver 1 that would stay relevant because he's the only source of offense for him, but that is not what we got. If we look at his season log, it hasn't necessarily been horrible. He's been averaging about 7 targets and 10 fantasy points a game, but the whole situation with him requesting a trade and not getting it, and now potentially being faced with a calf injury, his season might just be coming to an end. Chris Moore and Nico Collins are becoming more involved in this offense, and they're going to eat away from some of his targets. The Texans are not playing for anything anymore except maybe for the number 1 overall pick. And I have to end this video off with the truest representation of rock bottom Kyle Pitts. We were all very excited to see Kyle Pitts come out here and blossom into a top 3 tight end, but that is not at all what happened. He averaged a decent amount of targets, but the offense could not get moving, and the throws were not great. Then he obviously got injured ending his season, but I do still think there's a little bit of potential there for next season. While he wasn't getting an insane amount of targets, the targets that he did get were very valuable red zone targets and deep throw targets. Tight ends usually go and break out in their 3rd or 4th year because playing tight end is hard. You have to essentially be an offensive lineman and a receiver. The QB situation might get a little better if Desmond Ridder does play. Marcus Mariota's absolute trash, but he definitely did not live up to his 3rd round ADP. That will go ahead and end this video off. If you do have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the comments section. Don't forget to drop a subscribe as well, and I'll see you guys in the top start and sits video coming this week.